I was convinced I was about to lose everything that day. Not just my truck, not just the little money I had left. I mean my sanity, my strength, maybe even my daughter's trust in me as her father. It's strange how quickly life can corner you. One moment you're driving down the interstate, thinking about what to cook for dinner, and the next moment you're staring at your daughter's frightened eyes, wondering how you're going to protect her when you can't even protect yourself. But before I tell you about that day on the highway, the day a stranger changed everything, you need to know how I ended up there in the first place. I grew up in a house where faith was everywhere, yet somehow never quite reached me. My mom was the praying type, whispered verses before breakfast, little God bless yous sewn into every phone call. She believed in miracles. She believed God had his hand in everything. My dad, different story. He was silent, hardworking, more at home with a hammer in his hand than a Bible. He believed, but it was a belief you couldn't see. No prayers out loud, no church unless mom begged. His silence about God taught me more than his words ever did. And me, I stood in between, not a believer, not an unbeliever, just a kid watching from the sidelines, unsure if God ever really noticed kids like me. I'll be honest, divorce isn't just paperwork. It's not just splitting furniture or signing your name on a dotted line. Divorce is watching your home turn into an empty shell. It's the sound of your child asking why mommy and daddy don't live together anymore and not having an answer that doesn't break you. It's the nights alone, staring at walls that don't talk back. It's the heavy silence of a bed that used to hold warmth but now just holds you and your regrets. And then there's the court dates, the custody battles, the humiliation of strangers deciding when you get to see your own child. You're not just losing a marriage, you're losing time, precious, irreplaceable time. Emma became my anchor. Every second I had her felt like both a gift and a countdown. I'd pick her up on Fridays and she'd come running into my arms like I was the hero she still believed in. For 48 hours, the world made sense again. We'd cook pancakes, laugh at cartoons, stay up too late with popcorn and silly movies. And then Sunday night came. Dropping her back off was like handing away a piece of myself. Watching her small figure walk back to her mother's door, I can't describe that emptiness. It's a quiet kind of pain, one that follows you home and lingers in your chest long after you've turned off the car. Every weekend ended with the same question in my heart: am I enough? Because during the week I was barely surviving, 2 jobs, sometimes 3. I was constantly tired, constantly broke, constantly behind on bills. I'd collapse into bed not from living but from surviving. And when Emma would look up at me with those big eyes, I'd smile, but inside I was crumbling. She deserved more, a father who wasn't always exhausted, a father who could give her a home that felt steady, safe, unshakable. But I wasn't that father. At least not then. After the divorce, life settled into this strange rhythm: work, bills, custody, weekends. Most days felt like survival, nothing more. But Emma, she kept me going. Even when I was running on fumes, she had this way of pulling joy out of me that I didn't even know I still had. One Friday evening, I picked her up like always. She was 10 then, at that in-between age where she still wanted to be a little girl, but her questions were starting to sound older. She hopped into the truck with her backpack and her sketchbook, and the first thing she said was, "Daddy, can we go on a vacation, just you and me?" It caught me off guard. A vacation? I barely had money for groceries, let alone a getaway. But she looked at me with those wide, hopeful eyes, the same eyes that had been asking for years if things would ever feel normal again. I didn't answer right away. I gripped the steering wheel a little tighter, and she said softly, almost like she knew my answer before I gave it, "I just want us to go somewhere happy, Daddy, just for a little while." That hit me harder than I expected. It wasn't about the beach or Disney or any of the places kids her age dreamed about. She just wanted me, us, a moment where the heaviness of life didn't press down on her shoulders. I smiled at her and said, "We'll figure something out, sweetheart. Maybe not a big vacation, but we'll go somewhere, just you and me." She leaned her head against the window, satisfied with that answer, but I felt the weight of it sink deeper into my chest. I had to give her something, even if it was just a drive, even if it was just a day. The next morning, we decided to go visit one of those roadside nature trails about an hour outside town. Nothing fancy, just some hiking paths, a little river, maybe a picnic if we could find a good spot. Emma was in the passenger seat with her sketchbook, humming quietly to herself. She had this habit of drawing little animals and writing stories about them. I glanced over at her once or twice, and for the first time in weeks, I felt a flicker of peace. Just a father and his daughter heading out for a simple day. The sky was gray, November cold, the kind of chill that cuts right through your jacket, but inside the truck it felt warm, almost safe. Until it was. We were about halfway down I-40 when it happened. The truck gave a sudden jolt, a cough like it was choking on air. I pressed the gas, but nothing. The engine sputtered, wheezed, and then silence. I coasted us over to the shoulder as semis roared past, their horns blaring like angry warnings. Emma gripped her seatbelt, eyes wide. "Daddy, what's happening?" My throat tightened. I wanted to tell her it was fine, that I had it under control. But the truth was, I didn't. The truck was dead. I tried the ignition again and again, but it just clicked, no life. The cold seeped in as the heater shut off. The smell of exhaust mixed with the sharp winter air that slipped through the cracked window. Emma's small voice broke through. "Are we gonna be okay?" And I swear that question cut deeper than any argument, any court battle, any lonely night I'd faced, because she wasn't just asking about the truck. She was asking about me, about us. I sat there staring at the dead dashboard, hands trembling on the wheel. My phone was down to 5%. No money for a tow truck, no plan, just me, my daughter, and a broken down truck on the side of a highway. I felt helpless. And in that helplessness, something cracked open. I hadn't prayed in years, not really, but in that moment the words slipped out, shaky and quiet. "God, if you're real, please, I can't do this alone, not with her watching me fall apart." I didn't expect an answer, I didn't expect anything. I just sat there, swallowing hard, trying not to let my daughter see how scared I really was. It couldn't have been more than 5 minutes later when I saw it, a beat-up old Chevy slowing down, pulling over in front of us. For a second I thought maybe they were lost. Nobody stops on the interstate anymore. Everyone's in a rush, everyone's got somewhere better to be. But this man stepped out, mid-50s, scruffy beard, denim jacket worn thin at the elbows, baseball cap pulled low. He walked up slow, careful, hands visible like he didn't want to scare us. "You folks okay?" he asked, voice rough but kind. I opened my mouth but no words came out. All I could manage was a shaky, "Truck died, won't start." He nodded, glanced at Emma, then back at me. Without another word, he walked around to the hood and tapped it like he was greeting an old friend. "Pop it open," he said. And just like that, he got to work. I watched from the side as he dug into the engine with bare hands, the cold air biting at his skin. Emma whispered, "Daddy, who is he?" "I don't know," I said honestly. She kept her eyes on him, then on me. I think she was waiting to see if I trusted him. And the truth is, I didn't know why, but I did. Something about the way he moved, the way he didn't waste words, the way he seemed sent. He finished a movement under the hood and paused, wiping his hands on his jacket like he'd just stepped out of an old habit. Emma kept watching him, that quiet, hopeful stare kids have when they're waiting for grown-ups to fix the world. I felt ridiculous for wanting to be fixed that bad, but I did. The man didn't rush, he talked like somebody who had time to think. "Fuel pump," he said, like he was naming something simple that anyone could see if they weren't panicking. "Been on the fritz in this model." He worked methodically, fingers sure even in the cold. He didn't ask me what happened. He didn't ask about my life, he just worked. While he was under the truck, he hummed a little tune. Not a song I recognized, just something steady, the kind of low hum people make to keep their hands moving. I remembered standing there, feeling all the shame and fear and the small, stubborn hope that maybe this was the moment something changed. Maybe this was the answer to that prayer I had mumbled. After a while, he sat back on his heels and wiped his hands again. He looked up at me, and for the first time I really saw him. Lines at the corners of his eyes, a patch of sun fading across the shoulder of his jacket, hands that had obviously worked hard their whole life. He offered me a small, tired smile. "You got kids?" he asked. "Yes, a daughter, 10, Emma." The name felt like a shield. He nodded toward her. "Good, keep her close." That was it, no small talk about whether a car makes. Then he started telling me in a plain voice about the time his family broke down on the same stretch years ago. He said they were late for a funeral and a storm came out of nowhere and no one stopped. He described the helplessness, how the kids were crying and how every passing car made them disappear a little more. It wasn't a long speech, just a memory that folded into him like a scar. "I promised myself," he said, "that if I ever saw someone out here stranded, I would stop. I don't care who you are, I'll stop." There was a quiet conviction in that sentence that didn't ask for anything in return. He didn't blame anyone. He just said it like a fact in the same way someone might tell you the time of day. He went back to the truck. He swapped a few parts, tightened a clamp, and replaced something I wouldn't have known to name. While he worked, Emma crawled a little closer, drawing in that sketchbook of hers as if the movement of his hands was the best thing on a TV screen. She asked him once, in the kind of direct way only kids do, "Did you have a girl too?" He said yes, softly. "2 of them," he said, "used to be." When he finished, he turned the key. The engine stuttered, coughed, and then it caught. It sounded like a person taking a long, relieved breath. I felt something inside my chest loosen. I reached for my wallet automatically and held it out. He shook his head, flat. "No," he said, "don't just take care of her." I tried again. "Please, at least let me buy you lunch, let me." He looked at me with an expression that didn't need words. "You don't give me lunch," he said. "You give her the time. Take the day. Go to that trail you were gonna go to. Let her pick the spot. Keep the promise you make." It was simple. It was blunt. It was exactly what I needed to hear and exactly what I had ached for but could not say to myself. He swept his hand toward the open road as if to say, "Go." For a second I was ashamed that my relief was so tied to a stranger's refusal of money, but more than that, I was grateful. Before he left, he bent down and spoke to Emma like adults sometimes forget to speak to children, with plain words and respect. "You be good to your daddy, okay?" he said. "He does the best he can, don't you ever doubt that." There was a roughness in his voice, like someone who had been woken up in the middle of the night by life's worst turns and learned to speak clearly when it mattered. Emma nodded. She closed her sketchbook and hugged it to her chest like she was tucking the moment away. I watched them both, my little girl and the man who'd fixed our truck, and something in me shifted. The shame that had been lodged heavy in my ribs lightened a little. Not gone, but lighter. He climbed into his truck without fanfare and drove off, back toward the highway. I watched his tail lights disappear into the steady stream of cars, feeling like I'd just watched a small miracle leave the scene like it had always been there. We sat a minute longer, the engine idling, the heater warming the cab back up. Emma looked at me, and I saw the question there, the one she'd asked before. She wanted to know if we were okay. I reached over and took her hand. "We are," I said, and I meant it in a way I hadn't meant anything in months. That day on the shoulder of I-40 didn't fix my life. It didn't make the bills disappear or the loneliness evaporate, but it did something quieter. It reminded me that there are people who keep their promises. It reminded me that sometimes when you whisper for help, the world answers not with fireworks, but with hands that know how to mend what's broken. As we drove away toward that little trail, Emma started talking about the picnic she wanted to make. I listened. I smiled. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like maybe, just maybe, I could keep a promise to my daughter too. On the drive home, the sky took on that late afternoon pink, and I felt a shift inside me. It wasn't dramatic. No lightning bolt, no voice from the clouds, just a warming like someone had lit a small candle in a dark room. Not everything was fixed. I still had bills, still had nights where renting a U-Haul looked tempting. But the shame that had been a permanent weight on my chest felt lighter. The refusal of a stranger to accept payment, his insistence that I take the day with my daughter, that held more power than I expected. God helped me that day, not with fireworks, not with a thunderclap, but with a pair of working hands and a man who kept a promise. Standing on the shoulder of I-40 with my daughter's small hand in mine and the engine cold as silence, I felt like everything that defined me had slipped away. I whispered a prayer I hadn't said aloud in years, more out of desperation than faith. Then someone stopped. That man didn't lecture me. He didn't ask for proof or payment. He just did what needed to be done. When the engine turned over and the heater started to warm the cab again, something inside me shifted. I realized God didn't have to show up as a sign for me to believe. God showed up as a person who remembered a promise and acted on it. After that day, I started seeing help in everyday places, in neighbors who carried groceries, in strangers who offered directions, in friends who sat with me through hard nights. Those small acts were the answers to a prayer I thought was ignored. God used ordinary hands to mend a broken truck and quietly mend a broken heart. So when I say God helped me, I mean God put people in my path who reminded me I wasn't alone. He gave me the courage to keep trying, to be the kind of man who shows up for his daughter. That day taught me to look for grace in the small moments and to offer it without waiting to be asked. If you're standing on a cold shoulder in your life right now, whisper what you have to whisper. Help might not come like you expect. It might come as someone else's kindness, and that kindness can be God's answer.